Hey guys, Mustached Tom here to review the video game Oblivion Remastered. Now, I think it's important to note that I've never played the original Oblivion game, but came across this and was always kind of curious about how this game panned out in terms of story and gameplay, as it is one of the earlier open-world games, and I'm sure has sort of led the trail to more finery within open world games, as the open world games that I've at least come across, open RPGs in particular, have definitely refined their abilities from, increment by increment, let's say. So, with that being said, I figure it would be a good time to go a little bit backwards while looking at a remaster, that being this game, Oblivion Remastered. So let's take a look at both of its story and gameplay. First, in its story. The story follows you are imprisoned, and I actually don't legitimately remember what your crime was, but you are eventually come across by a king. The king, while you get off on, I guess, not being victim to be crimed of anything, the king decides to let you go, but eventually he is assassinated by something. I think it was like some other guy, or maybe it was an Oblivion creature. Nonetheless, one of his illegitimate sons is poised to take the throne, and now is set to task to be the one to put an end to this war that is between these creatures that are going through these Oblivion gates and the realm that presides outside of it, which is the area you primarily traverse around. Of course, following from that being Skyrim, being one of the games that if my timeline is correct, precedes this. It came after this, I think. I've never played Skyrim either, by the way. So I don't know if Skyrim is better than Oblivion, or if Oblivion's better than Skyrim. Not sure. But I can at least speak solely of Oblivion now, in terms of its story. So, from there, you are tasked with eventually building up yourself to help sort of as an aid, whether that be becoming more of a swords person or magic-based user, though I will talk about those more in detail in the gameplay section. I digress in saying that all these abilities and your first traversal through the Oblivion Gate are all steps towards achieving a victory. And as you progress further in the game, more Oblivion Gates open, they become more and more desperate, and certain side quests, I'll put in quotes, side quest, open up throughout the game, and eventually you are tasked with helping all the areas out from their Oblivion Gates to sort of help out this area that is like, I guess, like the Keystone area, I guess. It's like the northern part of this, I forget what the name of it is, but I think it's Bruma, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong on that, but anyway, point being is that you protect all these areas, you eventually go to the Oblivion Gates inside and stop the creatures and so on and so forth, and pretty much set the evil aside, and the king's illegitimate son gets the final strike as this epic dragon battle commences. And I assume that this final bit was what pretty much inspired Skyrim to probably, if it did come out after, probably to take, its wings from. And that's about it. So I'd probably say the story is okay. I'd probably give it a 5 out of 10. It's kind of meh at the end of the day. And something I noticed about the story is that, and this kind of ties right into the gameplay as well, is, as I quoted in terms of saying side quest, is that this game, being an older game, does not distinguish main story quest from side quest at all. Of course, more current games would do this, would come to do that. So yeah, it is very clear to me that this was a very early entry. In terms of gameplay, it is relatively simple. You can either go first person or third person, which was quite a feat at the time, I would imagine, being able to swap between both. The models were, at the time, not great, but they've been refined ever so slightly, obviously, with this being a remaster. And you swing your sword and either do that or become more of a magic-based person. Though, again, in terms of gameplay, I think the game definitely heavily incentivizes you to become a swords person or like a more physical-oriented fighter. In fact, this set of quests, you relatively get early on. It is, I don't remember each side each quest name, but it is eventually set to give you an entire set of armor called the Crusader Armor Set. If you watched my Let's Play, you saw that I got that set relatively early on in the video game, and once I had even had a few of these parts, the video game went from being pretty solid to easy baby mode throughout the majority of the video game. The only time where that spike came in was at the dead end of the video game, and I'm talking about a pretty sharp spike, which was interesting to say the least. Though, I would argue that obviously having a more consistent steep of a climb is something you would want to arguably reach for. Obviously, this is an earlier game, so those concepts of level of escalation probably weren't as heavily implemented back then, as I've seen other games master that technique, from Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which is fantastic, to Expedition 33, that it provides, enough challenges, and then through those challenges, the main course or the main quest can become, that baby content. Or if you were like me in my first playthrough and didn't understand your ability to pretty much traverse however you wanted, as well as a lack of understanding of Pictos and Luminas and all that stuff, which you'll see that Let's Play coming up soon, eventually. So we'll get more into that as, my review of that comes out, but I am getting a little bit off track with that game, as it has been nominated for pretty much everything for this year's Game of the Year. Oblivion Remastered was obviously not gonna make it, not gonna cut it, and I can definitely see why. There are definitely some pitfalls in both story and gameplay. Some of the combat is a little bit wonky, from getting on and off of your horse can be a little bit wonky. Fighting enemies can be extremely wonky. So, yeah, it definitely doesn't help in these regards, this being a remaster instead of a full-on remake where you change things, which, you can have your gripes about changes. I've heard of plenty of people complain, and rightfully so, about Final Fantasy VII's Spirit Destiny bullshit kind of being definitely taking away from the video game, where a lot of its character motivations and arcs are definitely extremely solid outside of that. But this definitely didn't navigate these, complex systems, and the magic felt underwhelming and didn't feel like something to sort of follow up on due to its lack of potential and output early on, and consistently so. I tried a few blasts here and there throughout the gameplay, and it never really felt satisfying at all. Which, again, I would argue definitely later games. Again, I mentioned Expedition 33 again, but it did sort of master that, making those abilities seem just as impactful and powerful as, your average heavy hitter kind of attacker and straightforward combat. But nonetheless, I would probably say its gameplay sort of matches its story. It actually does sort of match that sort of 5 out of 10 energy. This sort of middle of the road type of video game. And I can understand people, that hadn't been hyped for the original game being able to replay it. I'm pretty sure they got way more out of it than I would ever get. But looking at it as objectively as possible, it definitely doesn't even hold up to a lot of video games that I would, put it in the realm of. And, I'm here to set a standard of, where games should lie in terms of quality. So that means, being a little bit harsh from time to time. Again, I feel like this game definitely set the path for a lot of games. I'm not going to take that away at all. Hell, I'm pretty sure a lot of, of these other games would probably be thanking Oblivion Remastered. But it's definitely not the remaster that I was looking forward to necessarily. Again, I've never even played it before, so just dipping my toes in and finally seeing what this story had to offer was interesting. It just didn't live up to the expectations that I think Oblivion fans have sort of maybe even overhyped over the years or whatever. In terms of like RPGs, classic or otherwise, in terms of remasters, it is a shame that the one that I was most looking forward to, or one of the ones I was looking forward to, doesn't seem to have any, potential for a sequel or a remaster or anything in the wings, seemingly. That being The Legend of the Dragoons. Legend of the Dragoons is an RPG that I would love to see remastered in terms of like, getting a Final Fantasy Rebirth treatment in terms of its visual quality, and that its combat, I actually would argue its combat is, substantially rather solid comparatively to this game. It's a lot more interactive. Even being a turn-based game, something that I feel Expedition 33 took on a lot better as well. The Legend of the Dragoon is one of those earlier examples of it, of this more interactive system. There are definitely a few things that I would improve upon a remaster or a remake or a sequel of that game myself, just thinking about it, but seeing this is simply just a remaster and nothing more, I can definitely, again, see where a lot of other future open world games get their, their setups from, how to fill the space. Its side quest definitely needed a little bit work here, but that's something that gets addressed in other open world games. You have your Spider-Man video game. Ghost of Tsushima definitely comes to mind in terms of like occupying your open, vast space with stuff to do. These are games that I would obviously point to being more, honing in on this very craft of the open world and making sure that everything, everything feels inviting. Everything feels like you want to go visit that place and get that thing, or any multiple of things rather. And Oblivion definitely has the beginning markings of that. It just didn't quite master it, and far from it. It feels rather empty by comparison to a lot of these other games that I am mentioning, but probably definitely still paved the way towards those types of games, and having game directors think in that sort of way of filling that space and making sure that things are there are always things to do and things to look at and stuff to get. So yeah, at the end of the day, it gets both a 5 and a 5 in both story and gameplay, and that is my ultimate review of Oblivion Remastered. If you ended up enjoying this review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out those links in the description. One will head you to my petition about smaller YouTubers, second to my PayPal where you can help support me and my channel directly, and third to my Discord server. You can join, collab, shield, all that cool stuff for free. And until next time everyone, bye bye.